Hello and welcome to Truth Tuesday. I'm Pastor Ken Martin. I'm excited to share with you today because we have been talking on Sundays about Matthew chapter 7 as Jesus wraps up the Sermon on the Mount. And one of the things he says to us is that he is going to provide us building blocks, his words, logos. That's where we get the word Lego. He's giving us building blocks. So at salvation, we have faith, which we've each been given the measure of faith. God provides us Jesus as the chief cornerstone, and then Jesus provides us his words so that we use them to build on the cornerstone. So our foundation has to be built on the words of Jesus. He gives us these nuggets, he gives us these Legos, if you want to have a visual image. He's giving them to us, and he's instilling in us line upon line and precept upon precept what his kingdom is about, who we are, and what we're supposed to do. Now let's talk about foundations, because a good foundation is going to be attached to a cornerstone. So the concept of a cornerstone is that it is the perfect place to start and build. And if everything is built, lined up, has a proper reference point to the cornerstone, then the building foundation can be sound. And so it will be sound, it will be firm, it will be stable, it won't move. And only once you have a good foundation should you build a building or a structure on top of it. When we first inherited Forest Hill, I'm at Forest Hill UMC. Forest Hill is a little kind of suburb attached to Fort Worth. It's the southeasternmost corner of Fort Worth. When I inherited that building, I learned that it had a series of foundation problems. If you looked at me on a Sunday and there was a wall behind me in the pulpit, I learned that that pulpit wall was separating from the building because the foundation was shifting at that point. That wall was pulling away from the building, and I had about 12 to 18 months before it would separate and the roof would collapse. That's what the experts told me, everybody I brought out there. In addition to that foundation issue on the west wall, which was adjacent to that south wall, it was also separating and going in a different direction. And if you look along the southernmost portion of the building, along the hallway, that whole foundation, that whole slab was just one piece of concrete with no rebar and no supports, no beams or anything to adjust it or help it be supported. And so it was sagging. And then if you go to the northeasternmost corner of the building, which is the furthest point away from the pulpit, that portion of the foundation was going in a different direction. So we had a problem. Even though we were in COVID and we didn't need the building per se at the moment, we knew that there would be a day when we would have people back in. And if the wall had separated and the roof caved in, then there would be no point because we would have lost the physical structure. And it wouldn't have been due to a calamity. It would have been wear and tear and poor maintenance. So that's the building that we inherited. So the first thing we had to do was find out what is going to be our point of reference. Where is the best part of the foundation, most stable piece? And then the engineers built everything using that as a reference point. So our cornerstone per se, our second cornerstone for this building, is not the very corner anywhere, but it's actually in the middle of the building, the portion that is stable. And so everything was built to be attached to that and to be lined up in reference to that. Now, what does all that have to do with you today? You have a job you're trying to do, you have work you're trying to get done, you have bills you need to pay, you have family situations that need attention, you have all these things going on. And what I'm bringing this up for is to give you a sense of how bad things can be when the foundation is not firm and when there's a building that is built on a foundation that is not firm. Our lives are the buildings that we're building every day. Professional lives, personal lives, family lives, financially, business-wise, however you come up with it, whatever aspect of your life that concerns you, it's supposed to be attached to Jesus, the chief cornerstone. Because that's the one thing we know won't move. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Our attachment is one thing, We're supposed to be attached. We're supposed to use him as a reference point. And what he does as a gift is he says, I'm going to give you these Legos. I'm going to give you these truths of mine, these sayings of mine, these words of mine. And I need you to use your faith to attach them to the chief cornerstone. So you build your foundation with these Legos attached to the chief cornerstone, and then you wind up with a firm foundation. See, Jesus gave in Matthew chapter 7, he talked about the fact that there were two houses. One of them got washed away. But in Matthew 7:24, he talks about the one that was sturdy, that was able to survive all of the storms. And he says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, that's the logos, his words, logos. I'm giving you the visual image of Legos. Whoever hears these building blocks of mine, these words of mine, and acts on them. You have to act on them with faith. You don't just do it with your head. Acts on them with faith may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house. And yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Now, of course, the one that wasn't founded on a rock was washed away. It was destroyed. And so this is all critical for us, because my concern has been, and I've said it a few times a different way, is that with the proliferation of the internet and the words that we can get in Bible studies, 12 different Bible studies, you can get one on women's issues, one on men's issues, one on this and one on that. My concern is that we hear a lot of words, but the question is, how much are we acting on and using to build on as a foundation? Are we building on principles? Are we building on needs, the things we need to do and we need to know how to accomplish them? Or are we really building on the words of Jesus? Now, he just spent from Matthew chapter 5 through this point, what's called the Sermon on the Mount. He had spent that entire time talking about what the principles are for those of us who are going to live in his kingdom. Not necessarily just those who will make it into heaven. He's talking about those who will live in the kingdom. And he provides us character nuggets, words, building blocks upon which we are to build the rest of our lives. And just as we needed to make sure we didn't let that wall fall behind the pulpit at Forest Hill United Methodist Church, you need to make sure that your roof is connected to your foundation, that it is a good roof. No matter what the quality of the roof is or the condition of the roof, if it's not attached to beams that connect it to the foundation that make sure it won't move, then you're in trouble. So I could have gotten to Forest Hill and immediately put on a brand new roof, and still within 12 months or 18 months, the wall was going to fall. The roof was going to be separated at that point, and it was going to cave in regardless. No matter how good the roof was, it still needed to be connected to a building that was built on a firm foundation. The foundation is critical, and the thing is that we all get to build our own foundations. We get to build our foundations. He provides us all the materials. God provides us the cornerstone. And then Jesus gives us the building blocks. But the question is, how many of us will actually take them, activate them with our faith, dwell on them, build on them, so that the foundation winds up being what it's supposed to be? Matthew chapter 7, verse 14, Jesus says, for the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who will find it. Verse 21, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. The will of his Father is not the little things you do necessarily, the little things you do at quote unquote church when you're doing good deeds or when you're otherwise doing good deeds. But he said he is the one who does the will of the Father. Well, in this context, the will of the Father is that we will take what Jesus said, take the logos, the little pieces of building blocks that Jesus gives us, and that we will build our lives on that. And so that's why everybody needs a good covering. You need a good covering, and I say covering, and speaking ministry wise, is a pastor. You need someone who is praying about where the church collectively, group of people who are trying to establish God's will in the earth, where they're going collectively, and what building blocks do they need along the way in order to not only accomplish the purposes of the church and the goals of the church and the mission of the church, but so they can use those same principles to build in their own lives. And so that's one of the reasons I have never, even before I was a pastor, I never jumped all around with a million Bible studies. My number one Bible study is, what is my pastor, the one who prays over me, the one who is my covering, spiritual covering, the one who is the under shepherd, what is he teaching me? So that was my major. And then I would minor in all the other things that I was interested in. And so I think it's important for you, wherever you are, your pastor has been anointed by God, has been called by God to take you, help you get somewhere so that you become the best you can be, not just for the church, but also for the kingdom at large individually. And so as you receive the nuggets, that's where you start. That's where you dwell. That's where you meditate. And just like God keeps giving us tests, he keeps allowing certain storms to come into our lives over and over again because there are issues that need to be addressed. He might have you in the same place, meditating on the same word, so that you're prepared for the next storm because of what he is giving your pastor to teach you. So I'm not saying forsake Bible studies and the only person you're supposed to listen to is your pastor. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's the prime directives that you're receiving. That should be. So you should be in a place where you can receive what the prime directives are for your collective congregation and for you. And if you're not, you ought to be talking to God about, okay, God, what else do I need to do? Should I do something different? And praying for everybody so that everybody collectively gets where God wants you to go. It does no good to keep having all these buildings built if they're not being built on a firm foundation. So the buildings of your lives, the things that you're building and working on and you're adding, make sure that you're not just adding things, but that you start with the building blocks that Jesus gives you, the logos, the word of God. That's just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. That's just the way it is. He says, for those who will take his words and build on them, they will have a house that stands. They'll be the ones when he's looking in that great day, the great day of judgment, and everybody saying, Lord, Lord, didn't we call on you? Didn't we do things for you? Didn't we lay hands on the sick? Didn't we perform miracles for you? Didn't we cast out demons for you? All the great things we did for you. And he's going to say, depart from me because I didn't know you. I never knew you. Because we didn't spend time building on what he said. We just spent time referencing what he said. Maybe I need to end it there. Second time. And this is just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. May God bless you and keep you. Share this with somebody.